Welcome to Vader News, the network for innovators. I'm Bambi Francisco, and I'm speaking with Marissa Mayer. She's VP of Search Products and User Experience at Google. Thank you, Marissa, for joining me. In this segment, we're going to talk about how search is iterating online. And we were on VaderBox. We talked about how all these different companies are still trying to innovate. You've got Cool, that's trying to index more pages. You've got Aardvark and Chacha and Mahalo trying to do sort of this human-powered search. You've got PowerSet doing natural language search. Why is everybody still doing search? You've got 70% of the market share and growing. So what is it they're striving for?
Well, I think search is just getting started. If you think of search as a science, it's a science that's absolutely in its infancy. It's like biology or physics in the 1500s or 1600s. Like every day there's a big new idea. Every day there's a big new breakthrough. And you know, we're 100 years, 200 years away from even having things like the microscope. And certainly because we're in these accelerated time frames now of the internet, some of those things will happen sooner and faster. But when you think about what search is today, keyword-based search, typed from a laptop, giving you back URLs, sometimes videos and news and books, but in general, URLs for textual web pages, you know, that's really primitive compared to what it could be.
Right.
And you start to think about the different modes search should be offered in. Can I search from my phone? Can I search by voice?
Right.
Can I type a question in natural language
Right.
rather than based on keywords? How rich the results that could be when you start thinking about search as answers as opposed to a list of 10 things.
Right.
What's the best answer I can craft to this query based on all the information we've aggregated? Things start to get really interesting. And then, of course, there's the personalized aspect where I do think search over time is going to have to become more and more personalized to you to really get a relevance gain.
Now, I want to talk about natural language and where your efforts are, how you're progressing in that area. But you've been at Google since 1999. So what has improved with? I mean, I know a lot, but in terms of the algorithm, the page ranking, what's changed in the last 10 years?
Well, it's hard to articulate.
Distill
what
it down
was really
in
interesting
30
was when we were
seconds?
working on our 10th birthday at Google. One of the things we decided we should do was bring up our earliest index. We tried to bring back the very first one.
Oh, wow.
It turned out we couldn't, so we brought up the earliest one we could on the infrastructure we had. And I have to say, it was so interesting because we brought it up and then we sent it around to the search quality engineers. And they all mailed me. They were like, please don't put it up. And I was like, oh, why not? And they were like, we were terrible. Like, we forgot how bad we were.
Wow.
Like, look at these results. Like, you know, and it was really interesting because being there, being a part of it, being part of search, like, we have the sensation, like, Google gets better every day. We do a release on the site that improves some part of our ranking every single day, right? So, you know, so there's just a little bit of improvement every day, and over time that adds up to a lot of improvement. And when you're there, like, we had really lost track of it until we brought back the old index and the old binaries that ranked the old way, and people were just like, how is this possible? How are we missing this result? How did we rank this result number 4 for this query, right? Like, I mean, it's just amazing to see that. So for me, that really highlighted how far search has come. We're much more precise. We're much more relevant. In search experience, you really want to pay attention to a few different key factors. One is comprehensiveness, and the Google search index is literally 1,000 times or more larger than when we started. Right? So it's you know, the web is huge. We're crawling that much more efficiently. We've got a lot more content. The relevance, we started off with largely just PageRank and some notions of how close your words were together. Now we have hundreds of signals that go into the ranking function to help us rank better. And when you look at the user experience, we understand a lot more about users. How do they search? What are they looking for? What gets in their way? What doesn't? And how to evolve that overall user experience.
I remember when I was writing about the search, and you were counting how many pages you were searching, and you stopped at 8 billion, and after that it was just like, okay, we're done counting. We're now in the trillions or whatever it was. But so, you know, now as Google improves, you know, everybody else seems to be improving as well, particularly these search engine optimization companies who seem to be at battle with Google trying to create relevant searches and in the natural search part, and these SEO guys, which is not a cottage industry, it's a mansion industry, really trying to manipulate that. So how does that affect natural search? How are they affecting it?
Well, I think there's a couple things to note. One is the reason there's so much interest in where you rank in the search engine is because search is really important. It's becoming a way that people access information more and more. And I think that our view is twofold. We think it's natural when you own a website to worry about where your page shows up, and you should show up on the queries for which you're really relevant.
Yeah.
So doing the natural things to optimize your site, titling your page as well, having a logical link structure, labeling the links really what they point to, all those things are going to help overall with your ranking. But the real issue is they help a lot with your user experience. If users can use your site more efficiently, the changes you'd make to achieve that are the same changes you'd make to ultimately enhance your search rankings. And those are really where we want people focused, is on those types of search activities. It's when we see SEO activities where people are doing things that are a little bit more nefarious. Like when Googlebot visits their page, they show one thing, and when a user goes to their page, they show something else. This is called cloaking. With cloaking, it's very hard for us to understand how to rank this, because what will happen is we think the page says one thing, we show it in our result set. When a user goes there, they see something entirely different. And they think, wow, that search result wasn't good. Why did Google give me a not good search result? But the truth is, it was the behavior from the site that caused that to happen. So we do have means by which we look at, we'll do checks for cloaking. And if we find that you're cloaking, it basically means we don't know what your page says. And it's very hard for us to rank it, and that's ultimately when those sites will fall in their overall Google rankings. And so there's some very logical, natural things that you'd want to do for your site that would improve the overall user experience and improve your search rankings. Those are good things to do. But the things that are, in fact, more targeted towards tricking the search engine are things that we really want people to stay away from, because they ultimately really hurt our relevance.
So let's talk about in-links, which is basically where advertisers can buy links on publisher sites and raise their SEO. Rankings. And is that nefarious?
Well, I think it really depends on what you're doing. As I said, if it ultimately results in a link that says what you actually do and points to you, there's no problem, right? So if it says something about gingerbread houses and you click on it and it's a page that sells gingerbread houses, that's great, right? But if it says gingerbread houses and when you click through you get digital cameras, that's not great. And that ultimately hurts our relevance, because we're using that anchor text and that link to really try and understand, what this page is relevant to. And so I think that those types of links, as long as the link itself accurately reflects the content it's linking to, it's in the spirit of the web and it's in the spirit of PageRank and our overall relevance algorithms.
Well, let's talk about natural language. You talked about that earlier. And so, PowerSet set out to create this Google killer. Now they're purchased by Microsoft. Not sure what that says about the challenges of natural search, natural language search, semantic search, and where is Google in terms of trying to get to this point where we can just ask a question and not just type search with keywords?
Well, I think it also depends on which way you come at the problem. Do you try and analyze the question and understand the keywords in it and understand the meaning of the question? That part we're reasonably far away from. What's interesting we're seeing is, we haven't focused necessarily on semantic search. When you get to extremely large amounts of data, you start to see a precision that mirrors what would happen with semantic search. So, for example, on Google, if you type GM, we return General Motors.
Right.
If you type GM Foods, we give you genetically modified foods and General Mills.
Okay.
And you sit there and you say, well, gosh, does Google understand that GM by itself probably means the car company and GM Foods means genetically modified? It seems smart. It seems like it understands the semantics. But in truth, what's happening is, because we've got such a vast array of data, we ultimately can behave as if we understand the meaning, even when we don't, because we can find results that are so precise to your exact intention.
Based on past behavior and what people click
on. So I'd like to see us move away from keywords, because I just think that for some users, keywords are just very hard to understand. This concept that you should type words that are going to appear on the pages you'd like to find, that's hard, especially when you might not know the jargon. You might not know what types of keywords would occur here.
But the funny thing is that we're going to have a new generation of people. Maybe they don't even, that only know Google, that only know how to search with a keyword, and maybe there is no point to having questions.
Well, no, because I think this is how people learn about new things, right? So day, like I was looking at a portal for a door, right? We have these conference rooms that have, glass in them, and what do you call that? What is the part specification, right? How is it measured? What is the, like when you're learning about something new and you're trying to find something to buy or what have you, you end up not necessarily knowing.
Right.
Right? Is it a round window?
Right.
Or is it a portal? And like what words would be used on that page?
Right.
And the good news is some of the best pages actually use both.
Yeah.
Makes it really easy to find. But it's a hard problem, and it's one that illustrates why, at least to capture true user intention, which is what we really want to do, you, one, need a lot of data, but two, we also do need some intelligence in query interpretation.
Now, so you're trying to understand the user's intent. What about what user sort of presence? And I'm bringing up Twitter here because I think it's a fascinating search product and a real fascinating iteration of search, where it's you're really getting more up to date even about what people are saying about you. And I could do an ego search on Twitter and find out what somebody said about me 4 minutes ago, versus doing a Google search on shows at my blog that that I haven't touched in like 2 years or something. But so what are your thoughts on those iterations, and where's Google going to be in terms of providing that type of search?
Well, I think that Twitter is a great product. It's really useful. And I think that when you start to see how it surfaces news events in particular, or up-to-the-minute events, it's really great, right? This concept of microblogging, a few words here or there, and when you start to look at collectively what everyone's saying, you get a really good sense of, is there an earthquake, or what do people think about the election? It's really interesting to see.
Right.
I think that adding that element into search, a lot of times when people go to a search engine, they're looking for longer chunks of information. Not theses, but more than just a few words.
Yeah.
They want a paragraph or they want a web page, and so I think it's really important for us to be fresh, get the freshest content, and I think that Twitter might ultimately provide some clues in terms of, should we be looking? You can imagine if we saw a spike in twittering about earthquakes, and we've got our news crawler running that's bringing in news, ultimately surface for earthquake, be more aggressive about surfacing earthquake news. Does that make sense? Probably something occurred until you get we might not get a cluster and a big volume of earthquake-related news articles for a while, but go ahead and surface those early ones because probably it's relevant. Right? So it's interesting. We've seen the same thing happen in search. You remember Elizabeth Smart a few years ago. We saw this interesting thing happen on our search result page, in that when she was found, we of course had all the old articles about her disappearance. And we saw a few new articles getting published about the fact that she had been found.
Okay.
Right? But we didn't trigger news for about a good 30 minutes on search. And when we looked at it, we said, wow, look at the query volume. Everyone was searching for Elizabeth Smart. If we had baked that into the news relevance algorithm, to be like, wow, something's happening with the Elizabeth Smart case, anything new that publishes, surface in search because it's relevant, that's a really intriguing idea in terms of how to bake relevance for really fresh content into search. That said, I think we could use a number of different signals to get that. You could use the query stream itself. What are people searching on? You would also use what people are twittering on. And of course, searching people's searches or searching people's Twitters is always really interesting. That's why we have the Google Trends site, where you can search people's searches. And you can see, I mean, it accurately predicted the election. Obama led pretty much all the way along. And it's really interesting that getting that snapshot into what people are thinking about, which is what Twitter provides, is really interesting, and it does have some interesting implications for search relevance.
Let me ask you about, I want to ask you about other search engines, but just quickly, what is the search experience going to be for Google Android?
Oh, well, I think that search on the mobile phone is a really important concept to get right. It's clear that more and more people are going to be searching from their phones. It's really real estate constrained. And so we've been looking at, do you go with what's familiar for people? So you have on the Android phone exactly what they're used to on the search result page, or do you try and reformat it? And if you try and reformat it, do you echo all the information there? And we're still learning the basic principles. We want something that really fits well in that real estate, but ultimately is as feature-rich as the website. It's, on local searches, we recently had a whole set of data around business opening hours. So when you search, for example, on something like AT&T Palo Alto, California, on Google, you can see not only the store and the address, but the hours it's open. So the other night I wanted to make a change to my cell phone. I could see, like searching from work, that it was open till 9.
Yeah.
Right. But interestingly, when I was searching on my phone, we have the phone number, so you can call them. So I called them and got the hours, but you couldn't see the opening hours. So that's really the trade-off. Less space. How do you still get the same amount of stuff in that space? And to the extent you need to make trade-offs, how do you make sure you don't remove something that's really useful? And so that it's going to be a place where we do a lot of experimentation. We iterate a lot. I'm sure that we'll ultimately get the user experience right, but it's a new problem for us in terms of how do you design for that small screen.
Well, let me go through this one last question. It's just going to be more of a word association, but you can give me an answer in a couple of sentences. So cool and not being cool.
I think that their index needs to be more comprehensive before we can really understand if the relevance algorithms work better.
Okay. Aardvark.
I don't know Aardvark.
Okay. It's kind of a human search engine, human-powered search engine. Mahalo?
Yeah, so on the human-powered search engines, I think that humans are good, but they really need to augment algorithms. The web is so big, attempting to have humans alone categorize and answer everything just isn't going to scale, not at the rate the web is scaling. So you need a good base algorithm and then have users refine it.
In 5 years, how is search going to be different?
I think there'll be a lot more search on your mobile phone. I think there's going to be a lot of new media on the search result page. Images, videos, graphs, diagrams, seamlessly coming together, so the answers feel more encyclopedic, right, in terms of their format and the way they answer your questions.
Okay. Yeah, there's just going to be a lot more stuff to search. What did Eric Schmidt say? How many more trillions of pages? 300 trillion?
We've recently seen a trillion web items.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thanks, Marissa. And we're going to have you back on to talk about how the web is changing online behavior. I've been speaking to Marissa Mayer. She's the VP of Search Products and User Experience at Google. I'm Bambi Francisco. You've been watching Vader News.